Hey there, thanks for joining us on the Chief Executive Aviator. I'm Simon Turner, your host, and you're wondering what we're all about. Well, we're pilots who happen to run businesses, or maybe we're business people who happen to fly. Either way, we've figured out that flying gives us a serious edge. Every week, I sit down with another pilot entrepreneur or executive who's discovered that their plane isn't just some cool ride, it's actually a secret weapon for growing their business. We're talking real stories about landing deals and actual landings, expanding markets, and yes, still making it home in time for dinner. Whether you're already flying for business or you're just dreaming about it, you're going to hear some pretty amazing stories about how aviation changes the trajectory of lives and businesses every day. So get your pre-flight done. We've got a great conversation headed your way. Devin, welcome to the Chief Executive Aviator. It's wonderful to have you here on such a cold, wet, snowy, sleety, icy day. Looking forward to having a chat to you about what you do, who you are. You've got a pretty interesting set of businesses that you've got, including one in aviation, and learning a bit about how you use your plane to fly for business as well. Yeah, maybe the best place to start is tell the audience who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So Devin Wanzor, I live in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I've been in Oklahoma my whole life, Stillwater for just shy of 5 years now. And I co-own and operate a flight school here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I also have a development project that I'm working on right now, residential development, own and operate some commercial real estate with my wife. And then probably my primary thing, if I had to pick one that takes most of my time, is providing financial due diligence services to people purchasing businesses. So I've got a background like in the small business world, really my whole career back to 2007. So help about probably 30 clients a year do due diligence on companies that they're looking to buy.
Awesome. Are those companies typically like SMBs that are, generational kind of changeover or that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's primarily companies doing like less than 10 to 15 million a year in revenue. And our typical client is, if you've heard the term a searcher, somebody that has perhaps been in the corporate world and has decided that they want to go out and kind of run their own thing. So it's typically a first-time business owner. Although we have some people that don't fit that profile, but that's like the typical person. It's their first business, and so they're looking for experienced guidance to get through that process.
Well, tell us a bit about like your aviation origin story. How did you get into flying, and what got you interested in the first place?
Yeah, I wrote some notes down because actually it's a very compressed timeline. So my first flight in a GA aircraft was in August of 2022. So still not even 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
Flew up to, I say GA aircraft, it was kind of cheating in hindsight, although I didn't know it. So it was a Piper M600, and we flew from Stillwater up to Oregon and then over to Idaho. So
Nice.
Of course, I thought that was awesome but that's definitely not a typical GA plane. It was a guy that actually he's my partner in the aviation business I have now, but we had kind of just become friends at that point, and so went up there, and then I basically came away from that experience going, well, hey, if you could do it, then I probably can. And so I took my first flying lesson in the next month in September. Did a few more that year, but it was kind of like wasn't really sure if it was for me and like how am I going to use it, but then I just kind of kept being attracted back to it. So I really kind of started training full time, I guess you could say, in April of 2023. Got my PPL in September of 2023. I bought my own plane in there. I think I had about 25 to 30 hours when I bought my first plane. Like I said, got my license in September. Around that same time, we had decided to start an aircraft rental business in Stillwater. And so we kind of got that off the ground in January of last year, 24, and then bought the flight school in June of 24. So 22 months from first GA flight to owning a flight school.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's you probably didn't have enough time for all the old curmudgeons in aviation to tell you how you're going to lose all your money in an aviation business, which seems to be their first and sometimes only bit of advice they want to give you. But
no, there was definitely some of that along the way, but I guess dumb enough to ignore that.
Yeah, it's kind of like that little bit of naivety helps you get these sort of things going.
Yeah. No, definitely. Awesome. It was a quick journey, and it's definitely, still evolving substantially. I mean, it's from June when we bought the school to today, sitting here in February. 8 months later, give or take, it's changed a tremendous amount. And hopefully by the end of 2025, we'll have a lot more things that we can accomplish.
How cool. And what was the first plane that you bought?
I bought a Piper Cherokee 180. So I
Nice.
was training in a
Yeah.
Cherokee 140, bought the 180 over in Chattanooga,
Uh-huh.
Tennessee. So that was a cool experience to
Fly it
go out
back.
there and get to bring that back. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was really cool.
How cool. And is that plane now part of the flight school fleet, or have you said
Hmm.
goodbye? Yeah.
It is.
How cool.
Actually, just as of December, so I kept it and flew it probably about I got up to about 300 hours, I would say.
Yep.
And then I bought a Mooney M20J back in December.
Awesome.
And so then we shifted the Cherokee 180 over into the flight school fleet.
How cool. I bet you love the Mooney, and it's probably flies twice as fast as the 180.
Not twice as fast, but definitely faster. And
Yep.
having the retractable gear, it felt like a good step to take to
Yep.
kind of continue building skills. So
Definitely. And appeasing the insurance gods for when you want to go and buy that M600 later on down the track. You can tell them that you've got that
yeah,
complex retractable time.
yeah, we'll see about that.
Nice one. So tell us a little bit about the flight school. Like, what on earth made you decide to start a flight school?
So really, we bought two aircraft in late 2023 with sort of the thesis of, okay, we have Oklahoma State University
Yep.
sitting here, which has a very big college flight program, but those students, if they wanted to just rent and do something fun on the weekend or take their parents up, they couldn't use those planes. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was our original thesis was, hey, let's just create a more or less a rental outlet for that group primarily. But what happened is once we finally got in business in early 2024, we were getting multiple calls every day for people wanting to train.
Mm-hmm.
There was one other flight school in Stillwater outside of the university. Generally had been relatively small. They
Mm-hmm.
had 3 aircraft, and so we found out pretty quickly that there was excess demand there because
Yep.
OSU, these numbers aren't exact, but they'll get 600 to 700 applicants a year for their program, and they accept, I think, 85.
Yep.
But a good portion of the people that don't get accepted still want to come
Mm-hmm.
to OSU and continue to fly. And
Yep.
so we learned pretty quick. And so we actually kind of went down the path of like airport approvals and all that of
Yep.
just starting a new flight school. And then as we were close to finishing that process, ended up working out a deal with the existing owner of
Awesome.
the school over here to just buy them.
Yeah.
And then we did that in June. We were able to add the 2 aircraft that we already had for rental into the school immediately. And then we've added some additional aircraft since that time. And so we went from, I think they had about 30 students
Yep.
and 4 instructors when we bought it, to today we have roughly 70 students and 7 instructors
How cool.
in the school. Yeah.
That's awesome. Are you happy with your progress so far, or have you felt like this has been like a learning year and next year will be the big winner?
Well, so I would say we really did not know what the true demand was when we
Mhm.
bought it and when we got into it. I mean, we had a hunch that there's more than is being met, but I would say we were really happy with the demand side
Yep.
that we experienced, but it also prevented us from doing much else than trying to figure out how to meet that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this year, I think, is much more focused on tightening up operations. We
Mhm.
really need to figure out how to have in-house maintenance,
Oh yeah.
which is
Yep.
it's something that's holding us back as a school from a downtime perspective.
Mhm.
So, this year, in fact, I was on the phone with my partner in the school this morning, kind of talking about, what our priorities need to be. We went to a conference last week and came away with some great ideas from some much more experienced operators than ourselves. So we've got a plan for
Yep.
what we want to execute this year, which is mostly about improving operations, optimizing our fleet a little bit,
Yep.
maintenance, things like that.
How cool. What's the most
Yeah.
unexpected thing that you've learned from running a flight school?
Unexpected? I think the benefit that I had is that I had literally just went through the process myself. And so my curiosity in asking questions of my instructor and also asking questions of the owner of the school where I was training, it was really a maintenance shop. It was over in Enid, Oklahoma is where I trained.
Yep.
So it was a maintenance shop. So I'd ask a ton of questions about that, watched I don't know how many hours of video.
Yeah.
So I don't know that anything really sticks out as unexpected other than just the breakdown of my time
Mhm.
has been, I don't know, probably 80% focused on solving maintenance related things. And so I really wouldn't have foreseen that
Yep.
early on. Part of that's because, again, we don't have an in-house maintenance team, and also the provider that we use is not even located in Stillwater. They're a 15-minute flight away over in Cushing, and so that makes it extremely challenging. I mean, it's worked well for us, but it's something that as we've grown, we've definitely realized that we need to figure out how to own that piece of the process.
Yeah, fascinating. It'll be interesting to see how you kind of accomplish that. It's maintenance, particularly here in Oklahoma, is hard because the world's biggest military MRO drags a lot of people in, and then the world's biggest commercial MRO here in Tulsa pulls everyone else in, and it's kind of a challenge to keep maintenance staff. And I know a lot of the smaller shops and stuff have a real battle doing it, but there's definitely people out there. You just got to go digging around for them, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have a couple of ideas on how we're going to approach it. A couple of those that we can't talk about just yet, but hopefully sometime this year we'll have a solution to that. So it's sort of 1A and 1B on our priority list for 2025, I would say.
Nice. I like it. Well, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about your flying. How do you use aviation in your business? You obviously run an aviation business, but how do you use it in your business, and probably more specifically in the part of your business where you're doing advisory on M&A and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so like on the M&A side, it's worked out to be more traveling to conferences, I would say, where I can meet a lot of potential new clients at once, and then also be able to. A lot of those take place in places that are much harder to get to. For commercial air travel. So that's made it a lot easier where I can, a 2-day conference, I can pretty much accomplish that in 2 days, being able to fly myself, assuming that the weather's good enough. So that's probably the biggest way I'm using it on that side. Thinking back, which if I wasn't a pilot and had taken on this flight school thing, it would have been immensely more difficult, because a good portion of like the days that I fly, it's something related to, ferrying aircraft or taking somebody over to pick one up, or going up to Wichita to avionics shops, or taking radios to somebody up in Wichita that we're having repair, flying planes to, have an IFR cert done or a transponder cert done somewhere else. So definitely a huge portion of the flying that I'm doing is, related to the flight school itself.
Yeah, that's amazing.
For longer trips, like I said, my partner has the M600. So like last week, we went to the flight school conference down in just outside of Orlando. So we took his plane for that. So that certainly helps as well.
Yeah, but sure, it gives you a bit of a time advantage coming out of Stillwater. There's not that many flights every day to get, and you can really only route through. Is Dallas the only flight into Stillwater? So
we have two a day here on American, but they just go to Dallas, and seems like they get canceled a fair bit. So
we're probably not as bad as Stillwater here in Tulsa, but we still end up getting a decent number of them canceled, because usually they're ferrying a plane here because it's broken to get fixed. But tell me about the flight school a little bit. Do you have many? I mean, you're in a university town, so maybe not, but some of the other flight school operators, for instance, here in Tulsa that are not career flight school, over 80% of their clients are entrepreneurs who want to fly. I was just literally talking to one this morning about this, and he's basically pivoting his whole business to just helping entrepreneurs fly, and that's it. No more students and stuff like that, because that's all. He's got enough work to do that, and sort of brings their planes back when they've sent them to maintenance, and he's kind of sort of just manages that. Do you find that you're getting quite a lot of people that are doing this sort of the entrepreneurial thing? They've realized, like you, hey, if I want to get to Main Street Summit in Springfield, Missouri, like by commercial travel is nigh on impossible, but if I can fly my plane there, I can do that. Or if I've got a client in, Wichita, I can get up there. Are you finding that you're getting much business, people kind of thinking, hey, I can use this as a tool?
For us, it's probably, 15 or 20% of our clients fit that, which would be a mix of business people, but also just later career people that are doing it more so for a hobby than just truly, hey, I think I can make a business case for doing this. But because of our position right next to Oklahoma State, probably 80% of our students are either ones that already got in there and they're just coming to us to get their private done, or they didn't get accepted. And they are going to do their private with us and reapply, or saying, hey, we'll just fly with you guys and continue to be a student at Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
So it's, I think our location right here in Stillwater, and certainly being next to Oklahoma State, is much different than what it might look like in Tulsa.
Yeah.
So, but also in Tulsa, you've got Spartan for people like that, but then you've got what is it, Destinations over there. I actually did my very first flight ever with those guys, and that's very much business focused. So there's, I think, more of an opportunity to specialize, whereas we're a town of 50,000 people over here, so there's not as much room to be a niche provider as some of those people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Destinations does a phenomenal job of catering to that market, and they charge accordingly, and they're a great serious shop. There are a couple of other sort of independent CFIs on the field that basically do that. They rent planes from other people, or in the case of the one I was talking to this morning, the pilot owns the plane, or the student owns the plane, and they're kind of helping them get into it, or they're helping them step up to another aircraft and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
When you're flying for business, how do you sort of think about, prepping for the flight? Let's say you're going to Springfield, Missouri, that sort of thing. What's your sort of pre-flight routine look like? How do you think of safety considerations, that sort of thing?
I think a couple factors for me. One, I'm still, very green at this, although, I think I'm 350 hours. So it's, for people that aren't in this world, that's not a ton, but it's not a little bit either. It's, still low into the spectrum. But two, I'm still working on my instrument rating. That's definitely slowed down since I bought the flight school. I'd hoped to have that done last year. So that means that for me, the weather's got to be really good. So I don't know. I'm the kind of guy that's like, a week out, I'm starting to check the weather, obsessively every 6 hours. Like, is this going to work or is it not? And like thinking about, should I book a commercial ticket? Because I don't always do that. I've heard people that it's like, well, hey, I always book the commercial ticket. A lot of the stuff I go to is like, it's sort of on the fringe of could be drivable, like 6 or 8 hours. So it's like, that's the ultimate backup plan, is to leave the day before and just drive if I had to. But definitely sort of checking the weather obsessively. One of the things that's probably changed for me in the last particularly 12 to 18 months is, I remember like right after I got my license, one of the things I was always looking at was like, what are the winds doing? Because it's like, what if I get somewhere and most of these places will have one runway, and if the wind's not blowing straight down it, like, you're not super comfortable. That's one of the things where I've just kind of noticed lately with myself, is I don't stress just a whole lot about that. So that's, I guess, where I've grown most in my flying abilities, is just being able to handle
crosswinds
more and different wind and crosswinds. So I don't stress a whole lot about that, where that used to be kind of the primary stressor for me. So now it's just really more about obviously making sure we're not going to have thunderstorms and things like that, but what are the cloud levels, and are we going to be able to stay in under or out of those primarily.
And I imagine you're usually flying one of the flight school aircraft, so you guys have a lot more stringent levels of safety checks, and probably doing 100 hours on those planes very regularly. I'm assuming, if they're all flying a lot. So you probably have to.
Yeah, actually, so I've always had my own. So like, I had while I had the Cherokee, it wasn't part of the school. It's just, I don't know, for me, it's like, there's a lot of like partnerships and things like that out there, and a lot of people that rent, like, probably not founded in reality, but I just take a lot of comfort in having a plane and knowing like, all right, I was the last person that flew it, and I know
that's the same
who's doing the maintenance. I know exactly how it's been flown. And so now that I got rid of the Cherokee, and that's part of the flight school fleet, I have the Mooney and own that myself. And so I do fly the flight school planes, but primarily just
ferrying
back and forth for maintenance and things like that. So, but I'm primarily flying my own.
Cool. And tell me about like how your family likes flying. I mean, you've only been doing it for a short period of time. Doesn't sound like you've got like a huge family history in flying, which a lot of people seem to have, particularly in our part of the country. Do you take the family up? Have you been on trips with them? Do they like it? What's the temperature?
This part will probably shock you. So I've flown probably fewer than 5 times with my wife, and I still haven't flown with my kids. So it's not that, like, they would all love to. In fact, my wife is kind of always on me about it. We've got a spring break trip down to Florida planned, so maybe that'll be the first time. But it's just been like, I've been, my first 7 years of my career was a banker, and so I think that sort of built like this inherent risk assessment personality into me. And it's just been one of those things where I see people that they'll finish their check ride and they'll be up in the air with their family like the same day, and it's just, I've always been just very careful. Most of the other people that I've flown with have been other pilots.
Yep.
I do have one good friend that I play a lot of golf with. He's by far spent more hours in the plane with me than anybody else because we've made trips up to Minnesota, Nebraska.
Yep.
A couple times to play golf. But as far as like loading the whole family in there, I haven't done that yet. I need to do that. Like I don't really have a good reason not to, and I feel certainly more than capable.
Yep.
It's just I guess the right situation hasn't presented itself where it needed to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. You got to have a decent need to do it. The weather's got to be good because you don't want to send them up on a real choppy day, otherwise they'll never get back in the plane probably.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
Maybe your journey over to Florida will be a good chance to do that and stop somewhere nice on the way and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're going like down to the Panhandle area. So it'd be, 3.5 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
So that'd be, stop halfway and not too big of a deal. So hopefully things will work out where we can do that. And now it's, I'm kind of back to getting used to a new aircraft as well. So I'm trying to spend some time with that and make sure that I understand things really well.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. You don't want to be faffing around with the buttons while your wife's wondering, like, does he really know what he's doing with this thing? But I'm sure that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So the golf trips, that sounds interesting. Where's your favorite flying golf trip, I guess, that you've done?
So there's a place that's up in like the far northeast corner of Nebraska. It's called Landman.
Oh yeah,
and it's a relatively new place, and the way they do it is so they're only open from April through basically the end of October. So a couple years ago, through kind of some weird connections, me and a buddy, they had like the season ending event where after they shut down, they have about 40 guys come out for 3 days, and you just kind of have a run of the place and play as much golf as you can. So we got invited to the first one of those, and we've been back a few times. So this year, like we have a buddy that moved away from Stillwater a couple years ago. So we flew up to Minneapolis, played golf with him, spent the night, and then flew down to, you fly into Sioux City, Iowa, which is just kind of across the river from northeast Nebraska. So we flew in there and spent 3 or 4 days playing golf. So that's probably the best destination so far. We have a trip in, he's my buddy that I fly a lot with is from Myrtle Beach. That's where he grew up. And so we're taking a group of 16 guys out there in April. And so he and I have talked about maybe flying out for that, although we did actually book a commercial ticket for that trip. So
nice one.
Hopefully a lot more. I mean, that was sort of like when people always say, well, what's your mission? When you're talking about what kind of plane you want to have, that's kind of always a big filter for me is like, I need to be able to get at least 2 people and 2 sets of clubs plus, suitcases for it to work. So that was like a great profile for the Cherokee initially.
Perfect. Well, that sounds fun. The Myrtle Beach trip sounds fun, but the Landman trip, man, the reservations for the normal rounds throughout the year went so quick this year. We have a few friends of mine from Oklahoma City, and I have a spot in end of July.
Oh, you did?
July.
Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be my first time. I'm sure it'll be maybe hot and horrible, but I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. It looks amazing, and
it's like a really wild place. I mean, the scale of it is enormous. I mean, I think they have some of the biggest greens like in the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's holes that can play probably 100 yards different in length depending upon where they set them up that day. So it's a pretty fun place. It's I like that event because it's we'll play around in the morning, but then we may just go out there in the afternoon and just kind of like find the weirdest spots we can and mess around because it's not crowded and but it is nuts that they sell out the whole season, and it's usually like an hour or 2, I think.
Yeah, I think it went in like 48 minutes or something like that this time, which is just
that sounds
bonkers.
Sounds reasonable, yeah.
Absolutely bonkers. Let's do a quick kind of lightning round, I guess we'll call it here.
Okay. I like it.
What's your favorite aircraft you've ever flown?
I would have to say the Mooney. I mean, I've only flown 4 or 5 different planes, but just the way that handles compared to the Cherokee, I laugh because like you get into check the flight controls in the Cherokee and it's like, you're moving 20 inches, it feels like. And the Mooney is just like an inch left and an inch right and 2 inches back, and that's kind of full travel. So it's just a different machine.
Yeah. And I bet you when you're actually in a turn, though, it handles a bit more like a sports car than the Cherokee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very stable for sure. I mean, the wingspan is significantly more and the shape is just a lot different. So
Yep.
it does really well.
And I'd imagine that's the fastest aircraft you've also flown, Mooney. Or you've probably, the M600, I guess, would be if you've.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm obviously not qualified to
Yep.
fly that. I mean, I've flown in that one is like, 275 knots, so it's significantly faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice one. What's your dream aircraft destination or like place that you would go in a plane?
Probably up maybe somewhere in Montana, I would say.
Yeah. Do you have a specific spot up there or just somewhere up in the mountains or something like that?
Yeah, I don't have a specific spot yet. So like we did a 3-week camping trip up into like Colorado, Wyoming
Yep.
last year. And so this year we're going up into like far northern Montana. We really have kind of fallen in love with that area, but
Oh, so
it's a
nice.
big drive.
Yeah.
To get up there. So we've been talking about, oh, well, could we fly like, what would equate to the first 12 to 14 hours? And
Yep.
maybe I'll have one of the instructors from the school like drive my truck and all the camping gear up there and then they can bring the plane back. So
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
we're kicking that idea
Yeah.
around for the summer for the trip. So
How cool. What's a dream aircraft for you and why? Like where do you ultimately want to get to with your piloting journey?
I don't know, call me crazy, but like I haven't really thought too much beyond where I'm at right now.
Yep.
Just because it's, again, I guess like risk tolerance and stuff. I've just kind of tried to take it slow and I have the benefit of a friend that has something a lot more, faster, bigger, capable.
Yep.
So, but as far as ever owning anything like that, I haven't really
Got that
I
far.
don't really have that desire right now. Like I still kind of giggle on the inside. Like I can't remember what it was, but I'm having a conversation with my wife last night, and she was like, "Oh, that's for your plane," and like just hearing somebody say that,
Yep.
like my plane, it's I don't know, it's kind of funny because again, even 2 or 3 years ago, I never would have imagined
Oh, totally.
being a pilot or owning a plane. So like I'm pretty tickled to be where I'm at. I'm still 2 months in with the new one, so I'm pretty thrilled with it for right now.
Nice one. Yeah, I sometimes have the similar feelings. Like I had dreamt about being a pilot ever since I was a little kid. I told my parents that I wanted to be a pikelet, which because I couldn't say pilot properly. Yeah, sometimes I still have to pinch myself, like exactly like you when you say, "Oh, it's my plane," or "I'm going to fly my plane somewhere." I was like, "Oh, I actually have an aircraft, and I can just go and do this." And there's not really anyone other than something broken or the being able to pay the fueler that can stop me from doing it, basically.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's the nice thing about the things that I've owned so far is not that they're cheap by any means, but it's still on a different scale than like a M600 or something like that. So relatively, yes, it's very cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. When you get in the Mooney, you're not thinking, oh, this is going to cost me like $1,500 an hour to go to Ponca City for some tacos or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that thing holds like 64 gallons of fuel. So I mean, I could fly much longer than I'd want to be in the plane on that amount of fuel. So
yeah, I've 92 gallons in mine, and I can basically go for 7.5 hours if it's just me in the plane, and I can't last that long in the plane. I got to pee and all that sort of stuff. What about this is maybe a two-pronged question? Advice for aspiring pilot entrepreneurs, so people who like you go, hey, I want to get into this. Maybe it's for a hobby. Maybe I actually want to use it a bit for work. And then next, you can sort of talk a little bit about like advice for aspiring students, and they could be a pilot, an entrepreneur student, or they could just be someone who wants to use it as a hobby.
Well, so I would say my answer to those two questions is very similar. And this is something that my buddy who I first flew with and who I'm co-owners of the flight school with kind of drilled into me is that it has to become part of your lifestyle and you have to be set up to where you can fly very frequently to remain safe and capable. Because like I remember early on after I got my license, like maybe it was, I don't know, an annual inspection. I can't even remember what it was, but going that first stretch of 2 to 3 weeks without flying, I mean, it's a very diminishable or deteriorating skill. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge that I see with a lot of business people is just not being able to get out there and do it regularly and not just expect that you're going to hop in and always, oh, I'm doing it when I have a meeting and that's it. Like, I mean, I still will go out even today and hop in and all right, let's just go fly around and let's do an approach and let's do some landings and things like that. Just to, hey, it's been almost a week. I need to get up in the air. And I think that's, I've done, I think my first 2 full years, about 160 hours a year. I mean, I see it through the school. We'll have people that oh yeah, I flew 30 or 40 hours last year and they want to rent, it just makes me very nervous
Yeah.
because I know what that amount of flying, how sharp your skills are. It's not
Hmm.
incredibly sharp. So it's something that you have to be able to work into your life on a regular basis. And so from a student standpoint, when I have a new student show up, I mean, there's one of the biggest challenges in flight training is always people's money and funding and being
Yep.
able to pay for it. So like, hey, can I just, maybe fly once a month or whatever? And I'm like, we can do that, but
Not
you're
going to be
just
worth
making
it.
a donation to
Yeah.
me because you're not going to remember what you did last time. And it's going to
Yep.
be like Groundhog Day. You're going to show up and do the same thing. Like you need to be able to do it 2 or 3 times a week to really make progress and have that progress stick and to get good at it.
Yep. Yeah. It's
So
very.
it's regularity for both of those
Mhm.
questions is a key to both being good at it, remaining safe at it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's very sage advice. I have a similar kind of philosophy myself. I flew 187 hours last year, but I had a couple of breaks where we went traveling to Europe for 5 weeks and obviously didn't fly during that time. And then at the end of this past year, I went back to Australia for 3 weeks, and
Mhm.
I just I don't want to get in the plane without my CFI there, and it's just a great excuse to go back through. Hey, we just
Mhm.
go back up and we talk through emergency procedures and run some scenarios and stuff like that, and do some you know basic kind of flight maneuvers and emergency kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And you know what? It costs $140 to take an instructor up for 2 hours. It's
Yeah.
great to like sharpen some skills. And I've had plenty of people go like, "Why do you need to do that if you're flying so much?" Well, I don't want to like one day get into the plane and like have forgotten a flow, or you drop a bit out of a flow that you do, and you know
Mhm.
that sort of thing, or even just get sloppy on pattern turns, and that's where everyone kind of comes undone. And I think it's very
Yeah.
easy to do that when you're not flying a lot. So I
I
always
think
have
that's the,
similar advice.
one of the biggest sort of disconnects I see in aviation, and I'm wired this way too, but your
Hmm.
average person that owns a business is used to being highly capable
Hmm.
and used to being able to just sort of power through things on their own
Yep.
and not the type of person to typically ask for help. And so there is a bit of a personality mismatch, I think, between people that own companies and people that make really safe pilots. And so I think that's one of those things that you sort of have to, commit to early on is like, okay, maybe in my business I do know everything and I don't need to ask anybody for help, although hopefully that's not the case for people.
Yeah.
But when it comes to flying, like you just can't have that attitude. I mean, there's just too many things that could go wrong. It's too unforgiving of an environment. And also there's, you're up there with a lot of other people that are depending upon you to be highly skilled as well. And
Yep.
so I think it's one area of life where you just have to commit to asking for help and getting training often. I mean, that's one of the huge advantages of owning a school is I find myself in a plane with, one of my CFIs frequently, even if it's
Yeah.
just hopping over to pick up a plane. And I've told all of them like, hey, if you see anything where I'm nuts, like it's your job to point it out.
Yep.
So, and there's plenty of them that have given me feedback on things that I could do better, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. First CFI told me I sort of asked like, what should I practice and all that sort of thing. He said the number one thing you should practice is humility, because like even when you
Mm,
get up to 1,000 hours, there's going to be times where you're humbled by flying an aircraft, and you need to
oh yeah.
exercise that muscle, because otherwise you won't learn and you'll end up killing yourself. And I think a lot of business
Hmm.
people, it's like they're using it to get somewhere, but they kind of forget that it's like actually really fun and an amazing privilege. And you know what? If you just build
Oh
in
yeah.
2 hours a week to go flying to keep sharp, like how fun is that? Like
Hmm.
it's so easy. And it's
I
just,
know.
yeah, it's just every time I go up there, I have to pinch myself. And I
Yeah.
don't think I'll ever forever think like, oh, it's a chore, I got to go out and practice an approach or something like that. It's just like the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Hopefully you never will. I mean, it may be time to give it up if anybody's ever in that situation where it feels like a chore.
yep.
So
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think that's probably a good place to end it on some sage advice. And I'm sure we'll hopefully catch up in person. We were planning to do this in person, but the snow had other ideas today. But hopefully we'll catch up in person. We'll get you over here to Riverside, maybe play some golf at Southern Hills or something like that when it gets a bit warmer.
sounds great. Yeah. I'd love to.
And Devin, what's the name of your flight school if people happen to be cruising through Stillwater and need some training?
Crosswind Aviation in Stillwater.
Awesome. Crosswind Aviation. We'll put it in the show notes. But thank you, Devin. It's been awesome to learn from you and hear a bit about your story. And yeah, everyone check out Devin. Devin's also on Twitter. I'll add his handle and you guys can follow him there too. All right. Thanks, Devin.
I appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for flying with us today. If you're getting value from these conversations with other pilot entrepreneurs and executives, do me a really quick favor. Hit that subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what app you're using, so you'll never miss another episode. And if you've got an extra minute and you loved us, drop us a 5-star review. Those reviews help other aviation-minded business folk find us, and honestly, they really just make my day. What about you? Have you got a story about using your plane to grow your business, or maybe someone you know? Well, shoot me a message on X at Simon G. Turner or at the Chief Executive Aviator podcast, or pop me an email, simon@turneraircraft.com. See you on the next Chief Executive Aviator.